see you.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been such a long time. How you been?
I've been really good, really good.
And you?
Me just training, same old. Keep training.
Oh, I love it.
I like to just start off by having you introduce yourself. However you like to describe yourself, your programs, your experience. If you could tell people how you met me, I think that would be pretty
Yeah,
cool.
that'd be great. So to try to keep it really to the point, short and simple, when my kids were really young, um, the school that they were at had a little preview of a child sexual abuse prevention training called
Mm,
Darkness to Light. And I attended that because I was a room parent. And I went into the headmaster and said, I hope you're going to bring that training to the school because I'd like to know how to protect my kids. And he said, I know. Why don't we send you to become a facilitator? And I thought, gosh, I don't know if I want to talk about it all the time. I just seem very selfishly want to protect my own children.
mm-hmm.
And that's how I got involved in the child sexual abuse prevention. But with that in mind, I also wanted them to be able to physically be strong young ladies and sent them to the Alliance Jiu-Jitsu Academy. I think that's what it was called at the time with Darren Roberts, and he was their coach. And I believe you were helping him at the time. And you both attended the training, I don't know what, like 2007, maybe 2008.
I think, yeah, something like that.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, man, I almost, what made me want to reach out to you is that I got the book by Kayla Harrison. So I was like, man, I remember taking some training with Kim back in the day. So
Wow,
that
gosh,
that made me
yes.
interested in having you on.
Great.
I think martial arts, just from my field, is like it's a real problem. And like pretty recently, there've been a lot of allegations and a lot of stories coming out. But these things have been around for so long. Yeah, I think just it's important that we talk about it and have people like you, experts. You know, you are an expert.
Like I said, didn't want to talk about it, but I'm really glad I said yes. You are right. It's been happening for a very long time. It happens in the privacy of homes. It happens in schools. It happens in coaching situations. It happens in camps and football. Sandusky keeps coming back to my
Mm,
mind. People have a lot of questions like, how can it happen? Why don't people just say no? But there's so much to it, and I
yeah.
guess as we talk about it, maybe it'll seem to make a little sense to someone maybe who hasn't been through a training.
Mm-hmm. So I sent you a few questions. I think
Yeah.
they were pretty, and I got these questions off of it was a jiu-jitsu site. It's called
Oh wow.
BJJ Safeguard. So that was kind of like gave me kind of the outline of what I wanted to talk about. So
Awesome.
I'll probably kind of just go down the list and add things, but mostly I just want to let you talk. Um,
Great. Well, I did get them, and for what it's worth, I have my little book just in case I get stuck on some numbers because even when I first started training, I think it was back in 2006, one of the things we would talk about are female abusers. And it was super rare. I mean, it was
mm,
like we would say less than 2% of abusers were women. Again, I don't have the exact number now, but I do remember that by the time, 10 years later, it was almost 10%. Now, does that
oh
mean more
wow.
women started to abuse? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened is people started getting aware and talking about it more and coming forward. And then you would learn about women abusers because for a long time it just seemed like men would be the perpetrators. But there's a whole bunch of different types of categories. There's child on child, there's men, there's women. But so I have my book,
Okay, we
just
got the
try to
book.
make sure that I keep some of my numbers and figures
Mm-hmm.
at least accurate. But again, it has changed so much, and it changes daily as more people come forward and more things get discussed and protections put in place. So numbers actually go up and down, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I've got.
So the first thing I had listed was warning signs and red flags.
Yeah.
So what are some common warning signs? I guess.
Yes. Um, so for what are the warning signs you should pay attention to? Is that kind of
Yeah,
the
exactly.
question? And again, I am going to refer to the book a lot because I don't want to get off on too many anecdotes that I've come away with from the trainings. But some of the warning signs, this is where it gets really tricky, because every child's going to be different. Every child's going to internalize or outwardly express something different. So you can have a kid that keeps it all in and tries to be perfect in every other aspect in their life and get good grades. I think we were talking about Margaret Hulster, the Olympic swimmer. You know, she had to go that extra mile. She had to become an Olympic swimmer to try to overcompensate for this. And then you have the kids that act out and end up trying to numb the pain and do drugs and stuff like that. So it's from too perfect to getting arrested all the time, wrecking cars. You know, it's everything in between. The big, probably the most consistent thing for a parent is to really child and to know the change. And sometimes that could be they loved going to practice and then one day they just don't, and they don't want to tell you why. It's not that something's happened, but it's very easy, and I can attest to myself. Sometimes you get really busy as being a parent, and you're like, oh, okay, they must just be having a bad day, and you want to go on about your day, but it's kind of like, maybe I should investigate that just a little bit more, you know. So why don't you want to go to practice today? What's going on? There's also a lot, not a lot, but many people shared in divorced home situations when all of a sudden maybe Jimmy doesn't want to go over to see mom and her new boyfriend. And that's not been a problem before, but it's just things like that. When the regular behavior doesn't seem right, you know, you got to pay attention to that. But I will just read some of the more standard things that we do talk about in the training.
Oh yeah, please.
They'll blame themselves for things, blame themselves for the abuse. They'll talk about feeling dirty or hopeless. They can even fear healthy affection. So all of a sudden you've got this really cute, cuddly kid that's all of a sudden not so much into it. They might forget things that have happened. Fear being close to others, even in friendships, you know, you'll start seeing them pull away. Experience memories and pictures and smells and sounds that are traumatizing. Like all of a sudden something doesn't make sense again. It's just what's normal for that kid. There's I don't know if you still have your book, but on page 4,
I do not have my book, Kim.
Yeah,
I don't know where that thing is.
There's a huge list. I can get you another one, but
yeah, I would. Yeah, man, I would love to have another one.
Oh, I would be happy to do that. But there's just a lot of you can almost, knowing the specific child, you can almost see the deflation or the intimidation or the isolation, or it's just a change in behavior is like the first sign.
So like a massive change in behavior, you're saying? Or subtle?
It doesn't have to be massive. It just has to be one that kind of doesn't make sense.
Okay.
And some of the things that we tell the teachers or nurse, or you know, the nurses in schools, because a lot of my training was parent groups in schools, in youth groups. If a kid comes into the nurse, he or she's got a stomach ache all the time, and they're like, this is like day 3, and you really don't have a stomach ache. That's something to look. You know, they're trying to, and again, it depends on the age of the child, but they're trying to say something's wrong and they may not know how to. And I don't know if it's here in the questioning, but part of it is we really have to listen to kids when they do talk to us, because many of them will tell a trusted adult, not always a parent, because sometimes it's too close to the parent and they know it. But if we're not using proper body parts with younger kids and they try to say, hey, last night daddy ate my cookie, and cookie is the family's name for vagina, and the teacher's like, oh, you know, God, that seems like kind of rude. What was a chocolate chip?
Yeah.
We don't know what they're talking about. So we have to be very tuned into the words that we're using. And when they might be trying to tell us something, because once they do disclose or try to disclose and it's pushed aside, it takes a long time for them to try to come forward to anybody again. That's why in your situation and Darren's and all kid, coaches where kids look up to and build some sort of relationship, it's really important to be in tune with, because you're going to meet them at a certain point in their life, but it's important to be really in tune to how their behavior is, and then to see how it might change and what is it that they're really talking about. So we can also talk about how you talk to kids so that they'll understand what's happening and how they can talk to you.
Yeah, I've talked to so many kids. One thing that helped me, and me and Darren would do, like, we always made eye contact with kids, so we always kind of brought ourselves to their level, or we were sitting on the floor or whatever, and I think that always helped because when you think about talking to your kids, it's always like you're up here and the kids down here. So I think that always kind of helped, and obviously we're playing with the kids and training with them, so we got really close to the kids that we were dealing with. So here's a good one, Kim. What do abusers look like? Is there a look to abusers?
No. That's kind of the tricky bit. They look like everybody. They are somebody's dad, they're somebody's doctor, they're somebody's mom, they're somebody's sister, they're somebody, no. I wish there was a way to spot one. There are behaviors to look for. The biggest one are crossing boundaries. And I know a lot of this right now is kind of talking about the younger kids, but every perpetrator or pedophile kind of has their own thing. There's a whole scale of types of pedophiles and perpetrators. There's the one that's born with some attraction to 5-year-olds, and it's really rare. But then there's the guy who might be dating some woman and she goes to work at night and he says, I'll take care of, the 14-year-old, and he gets drunk and takes advantage. That may not be his cup of tea, but he still abused a kid, So it's this weird, kind of, what do they look like? But so the behavior is, if there's a boundary that's been set and is crossed continuously, which might mean, somebody that likes to give kids a big hug and, oh, kiss me and say hello. And you can see that your child's really not into, Aunt Fussy with her, funny smelling mothball clothes and says no.
Oh,
and
I
you
remember
say,
that.
Aunt Fussy, Aunt Fussy, she, let her say yes or no. And if Aunt Fussy continues to do that, that's crossing a boundary. So, in personal relationships, in coaching relationships, and in school relationships, it's, if there's a boundary been crossed, that that child is in charge of their sovereign body and this person continues to cross it, that's a red flag. Sometimes people offer themselves up to help around the house, or to help with tutoring, or to help. I just want to help. Yeah, no thanks. Continuously coming. It's that grooming. It's that Trojan horse almost, because the people, a pedophile wants to be where children are. They want to work around kids, they want to be around kids, and they will do what it takes to get around kids. And that's kind of the problem.
I think also in the martial arts industry, that's a big part of teaching. Like, you teach kids. And so, unfortunately, it happens a lot. A lot of abusers are martial arts instructors. And a lot of times they're the owners of the schools. So it's kind of hard to protect yourself when the owner of the place you're going to is the person that's doing the abuse.
Yeah. And that's, actually, that's part of why some of the, at least the Darkness to Light training, when we would talk with parent groups and school groups, it's almost like if, let's just say, school X had a training and all the instructors and even the parents need to be involved, that says, this is what it looks like. This is what we're doing to protect our teachers. This is what you should be doing to protect your students. Then everybody's on the same page. And if you notice that new coach, Mr. X seems to be texting a certain child without the parents knowing, or giving them a ride, like, hey, in that training, we decided we're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what to look for. But yeah, if you've got an owner of a place that's, sure, come in after hours, just you and me, and I'll give your kid a one-on-one training, that's probably not a good thing at all.
How much has the social media, so say when we were training your like when I was teaching kids back in the day, like there was really no social media, so like I'm not contacting I wasn't contacting anybody. It was impossible to
Yeah.
But I guess now it's more normal. There's kids in elementary school with phones, so I want, like, how much do you think that plays into that line of communication? Maybe the parents aren't always able to observe that going on. Just wonder how do you think that's coming into play now?
It's a huge part of it, and even to the more extreme of sex trafficking and stuff, cyber sex trafficking, and with the pandemic, it's horrible. I don't know the settings that parents with young kids can do on their phones and their iPads. Part of the policies and organizations can be that if you're going to send your students, and let's just pick in jujitsu, so a class has to get rescheduled, and they're 15-year-olds and they have their own phones, but every time you text the class or one of the students that there's a change, the parents need to be on that distribution list. That's kind of when policies come into place, because otherwise it's just this free open market. And it has to unfortunately start really young when you're talking to kids with this stuff, that anybody contacts you that I don't know about, you need to let me know. And that's when it gets really tricky in some places, because kids want to be independent, and grooming's very seductive. They want to treat the kids like they're older. The kids want to be treated like they're older. Even when they're older kids, let's just say you've got some teens, they always want to be 21. You got somebody 25 saying, hey, let's do this. It's just this progression of people knowing how to get there, and kids wanting to be something more. And when groomers treat them special, they fall prey. So social media it's really not helping us in that area at all.
Could you go into more details about grooming? Like, what is grooming, Kim?
So grooming is the perpetrator's ability to gain trust. We were talking, I mentioned Sandusky earlier, and he not only groomed the kids, he groomed the Penn State Football League. He groomed the town. He was a pillar of the community. He was well known. He groomed the college football industry. So he was beyond reproach. I mean, he had a camp. He was always helpful. He was always there. And unfortunately, people saw things, but they really weren't, did I really see him take a kid over into the shower? Things like that, people don't want to see it, and the groomer relies on that. People don't want to believe it. The groomer relies on that. They ingratiate themselves into the parents. They ingratiate themselves into the system, and that's kind of the wicked part about it, because it could be a Sandusky, it could be a mother, it could be a father, it could be a boyfriend, it could be anybody, like we were talking about. They don't have a specific look, but grooming is gaining the trust not only of the child, but of the people around them and their protectors around them, and schools and institutions as well, because they present themselves to be that good, well-meaning, lovely person, which is really hard because there's an awful lot of good, well-meaning, lovely people. And you can't go around thinking everybody is a perpetrator in disguise. However, you can, as a parent, let all of these people know that your kids are trained in what to look for and what the boundaries are. And that kind of shields them in the sense that perpetrators are going to look for easy targets. And if they have a whiff that your kid is close with you or has other trusted adults in their life, they're probably going to just pick on somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And to kind of bring that back to martial arts, I kind of have to. That happens a lot. We have like, those figureheads that are, I don't want to say it's like a cult, but they're like, they're popular. They have hundreds of thousands of followers. There's people with tattoos of their logo on their bodies, and I think it's easy for uh, a situation to occur in those academies when you have this person that's like almost seen as like a hero, almost like something like that, like they're above everyone else.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly it.
And also to touch on grooming, one of my friends shared this pretty recently. It was, I think, posted. I can send you the clip of it, but it was posted maybe like a few days ago, and it was one of the UFC fighters. So her coach was also her fiance, and it turns out they had been dating since she was 15, and it was training with the coach at 12, and then started dating at 15. And she's in her 20s now, but this that her dating the coach at 15 wasn't the issue. It was that she ended up getting pregnant, and then the coach kicked her out of the gym. So I just thought it was it was an example of grooming.
Yeah, that's kind of hard. That kind of reminds me of a woman who didn't know that I had trained, that I've done trainings like this, and was telling me her experience of her son and her son's father, and she really thought that it was an older man just really finding his true love in a 14-year-old. And I don't know if it hit her when we were kind of talking or like after she thought about it, but it was, that's not what it was. She realized it wasn't that this older guy had taken advantage of her and abused her as a 14-year-old girl, but strung her along that it was, true love, and it wasn't. It was sad.
Yeah, it's very sad. And the thing I was mentioning about the MMA fighter, the lady, that happens very often. There are a lot of coaches that are the fiancés of these fighters. It's happened. There are a lot of UFC champions where their coach is their husband, and they've been together since 13, 14, 15. This is a term that I see a lot, Kim, especially with abuse. It's called gaslighting. Could you tell us what gaslighting is?
It's not just with abuse. It can be just sort of messing around with your family, leave the top off the orange juice bottle and insist that it was such and such, and it's like, gosh, well, you know recently? What, like, ooh, maybe I was a little distracted and didn't put the cap back on, but they will insist that what you're saying is wrong and you don't remember it correctly. It's mental manipulation. It is easy to, not easy, when someone's doing the gaslighting, they are very good at manipulating physical evidence or recollection evidence of a conversation. Oh, no, you must remember that wrong. People who are being gaslighted that may not know the term will find themselves apologizing for something that they're really not sure why they're apologizing. All of a sudden something's happened and they're like, they started the conversation down one road and the abuser kind of turns it all around and, no, it's your fault. Oh, okay. And that's when you're being gaslit. When something starts to not make sense and when you break it all down, it's very simple, but they're purposely spinning and confusing and throwing in things from the past or irrelevant things, anything to get you off of the subject to make you start feeling crazy, that's gaslighting.
And I kind of wanted to go back. We talked a little bit about social media. So isolating is apparently a really big tactic that abusers will use. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Like, how are they isolating, or why are they isolating? So this could be like physically and like emotionally from like their family and their peer group and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that kind of tactic happens probably more often with domestic abuse.
Okay.
To isolate, usually the woman isolate the one, you don't have any friends, your family doesn't care about you, I'm the only one that cares about you, and starts cutting off communication, feeding them information so that they don't want to reach out to mom or their best friend or whatever. And that's the control isolation part. You can only talk to me about it. That's also part of the grooming though. If you've got a groomer, perpetrator outside of the home, I don't know how successful they would be at isolating the child from their family. However, it might be that encouraging to spend more time with them or more time alone to have these conversations or something like that. But that purposeful isolation, I'm more familiar with it in the domestic violence kind of situation, whether it's mental or physical abuse. It's, another person is purposely gaslighting, manipulating things around so that that person feels alone and like they can't reach out to anybody.
Does that kind of goes back to the kids too? Like, say that they're not able to communicate, like say they reach out to, a coach or parent, that doesn't work. And then the kid almost kind of isolates a little bit, right? They kind of change their behavior. They're kind of just change a little bit.
Yeah. So when there's also different categories, or category is not the right word, but you will find, and I don't remember the percentages and the statistics, but out of a pool of children, if they don't have parents at home a lot, kind of like I forget what they called latchkey kids. Is it latchkey? Okay, so they go home and nobody's home, and they are isolated. There's probably going to be more of them in the abuse basket than somebody that comes home to, say, a stay-at-home mom and lots of brothers and sisters around. It's just kind of that target thing. They're an easier target when there's not people around. I'm not sure, but I highly suspect that the isolation that a kid might want to do is then that we were talking about, the feeling of being dirty or shameful. They don't want to be around people. They're going to sit with their, I'm bad, I've done something bad, which they didn't. Then they self-isolate, which I think is a little different than people trying to pull them into isolation.
Kim, what are some actionable steps for, I'm going to say, academy owners, martial arts school owners? What are some steps that they can take to kind of, combat a situation happening like we've been talking about?
I don't know the setup. I'm trying to remember back to Alliance. I'm not sure how many, if there were windows and things, because it was up on that second story. But the biggest thing, anybody who's going to work with kids can do is to make sure that their place is observable and interruptible. The days of, violin lessons in a soundproof room are probably over, and that's to the benefit of both the instructor and the student. Schools, whether it's a martial arts or a regular school, will have windows in the door, windows around. You got to be able to see in. It has to be at any time somebody can walk in and see it. That's probably the number one thing. It would be also to have some sort of training, some sort of protocol that every staff member, every parent, and the kids understand that nobody should be seeing them one-on-one. And if they do, it is, just take them off over to the corner to have a conversation about, you should or shouldn't be doing this or that, but that it's right over there. Everybody can see. It doesn't have to be something, behind the door, lock the door, close, just this one-on-one stuff. So that's the biggest number one. Those one-on-one situations just need to be interruptible and observable at all times. And it's sad, but it's necessary.
That's one thing I really took from the training was always having, some type of partner. So, me and Darren, we always worked together. It was never, me with a kid by myself. It was always, at least a parent or someone, Clinton, the front desk guy, the manager would be there. So we always did a good job of doing that. And then we had cameras in addition to having windows,
right,
that you could look into.
Yeah. And again, if everybody's on the same page in that facility, then it's really going to be very difficult for somebody to try to get away with anything.
And how effective are background checks, Kim?
They're effective. I would never say don't do them.
Mm-hmm.
The glitch is they're only as good as the ones that have been caught, So unfortunately, there's that history in the churches. They would find out about something, and instead of deal with it, they would just sort of pass them along to a new place to work. That didn't go over so well. That never really changed behavior. So the background checks, they should always be had. They're only as good as the ones that have been caught. I would think that more often than not, having a conversation with their past employer. I mean, let's just take the martial arts industry in that kind of situation. Who did they work for before? Maybe even interview some of the parents that person taught, and just see, is there a good feel? Did these people like them? Did they get a sketchy feeling? Stuff like that. It's when we have to become more creative on the questions we ask and the answers we get. I'm not in HR. I don't understand like employment law. What I've heard is you probably couldn't just say, yes, Mr. X was accused, but nothing ever happened. I don't think you can say that. But I do believe people can say things like they weren't a fit and we probably wouldn't hire them back. I think there's like verbiage that people can use to sort of say, yeah, no, don't do that. But to take those background checks and those interviews a step further is probably a really good idea. Also, identity changes and stuff like that. They could have been caught in Missouri and now they're looking for a job in Florida under a middle name, not a first name. You just have to get very thorough with who's around kids.
I just want to say most academies don't do background checks.
And then open field.
Yeah, and then even if they do background checks, they don't always. They might background check the instructors, but they don't background check the owners. And I said earlier, like a lot of times it's the owners of the school. So that's something that I think we need to do a better job of doing, like stay on top of.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure that would be just a simple, internet search sometimes of somebody's name, and there are people that accuse other people and things didn't happen, and it happens. But if you're going to be looking for anybody to be around your kid, I think you really need to go the extra step and do a search of the people in charge.
This is so we talked a little bit about kids and a little bit about teenagers. So I'm skewing this a little bit older. So in jiu-jitsu, it's pretty, I'm going to say it's very common that instructors will end up dating their students. and there's been it's very common that instructors will date their students. What could what do you think that's a good or bad thing, Kim? I mean, they're adult. Like, I'm assuming they're adults. Let's assume they're adults, but I just want to get your opinion on instructors dating.
Yeah. That's never a good idea. That's a power play. Kind of back to a certain president that was with an intern. Yeah, she was of consenting age, but he was in a more powerful position. That's just never good. If you want to date your student, you make sure that they get to the next level and they are no longer your student, and you go about your dating that way. But never in a power situation is it a good idea for, even in the corporate world. I mean, there's corporate policies about that. You can't date, you can't be married to your direct report and all that stuff. Sometimes they even take it, large corporations, you can't even work under the same vice president, so I don't know why that kind of structure couldn't be implemented in another kind of field. You can date a student of another school, but it's probably not a good idea to date your own.
You guys heard that, okay?
Yeah.
I don't want anybody attacking me in the comments. Kim, what's some training? So say I own a martial arts school and I want to undergo some training. What are some resources that I could use?
Well, I will do the plug for Darkness to Light because I think it's awesome. You can get an in-person training. You can have somebody come to your school and do a training. They also have training online. I don't like that one as much, mainly because very often there are survivors that, let's say in your school that haven't talked about it, and then they're on this training online, and a lot of things can get triggered, and then they're just stuck with them and a computer screen. It's always a little iffy, but it is available. People can take the training in the privacy of their own home. Sometimes they can do a group online training. I believe, I don't know if books are sent. I think the books are sent out digitally that way. But there's in-person training, there's online training, and there's a couple of groups out there that do these trainings. So you can just search child sexual abuse prevention trainings, but it is Darkness to Light Stewards of Children that I'm trained in.
Also, I know the Olympics, they also have their online trainings called Safe Sport. I believe every Olympic coach has to undergo. So yeah, I really enjoyed the in-person training that I did with you. I learned a lot, lessons I'm still in the back of my head that I'm like, oh yeah, I need to make sure this is handled. Yeah. Okay, make sure I'm communicating with the parents, make sure the kids are communicating with me, and vice versa. As far as policy, so going back to being a martial arts instructor or academy owner, what do you think would be good policy as far as like sexual abuse policy to have like kind of written down in the school?
School-wise, again, the background checks. There would have to be the policies of the no one-on-ones. There would have to be the policies of communication, parents and kids. It's pretty basic policy stuff, but it's also things that people don't want. Who wants to bring a bunch of parents together and say, listen, part of what we're going to discuss is how to prevent child sexual abuse. And parents are going to go, why do you need to do that? Is there something going on? Has there something gone on? And it's like, no. And that's why we're having this, so that we can prevent it.
We want to keep it this way, guys.
That's right. And it is the more that organizations do things like that it becomes more institutionalized, and then their radar should go up when some place isn't doing that. So why can't I see what you do for prevention? How come I don't know about all the background checks? That's when the flip's going to happen, is when organizations are not making that part of their package. But it's the background checks, it's the one-on-one policies, it's making sure everything's observable and interruptible, the basics.
I think, yeah, it's all very important. Again, a lot of academies don't have any policy. The instructor's dating all the girls in the schools, and God knows what else is going on. So,
Well, even when you've got some of the classroom situations, and more so when there's like little kids, and let's say you do have two people in the room, and you're dealing with one, and your partner's dealing with another, but a child needs the bathroom.
Yeah.
Another kid probably should go with them.
Yeah, I can't go in there.
Maybe you just have to stop and stand outside the door and not look. Like, it gets tricky, but there are ways around it. But those need to be addressed and at least talked about.
I think just talking, of course, education and just talking about it. Again, I consider this like a systemic issue. Like it's been happening for years. It's continuing to happening. There's a really good page on Instagram. They've collected all the stories of the instructors in jiu-jitsu specifically that are offenders or abusers, and like, man, it's just like every day it was like a new post, and all over the country too. So it wasn't like, oh, just happening one place. It was like everywhere.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a nice little project for you to pick up.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Kudos to whoever's out there doing that, because man, it's like it's.
Well, they may be posting it, but you can intervene and help turn that ship around. That sounds huge and preventable. That's kind of the thing. It is preventable. Everybody just has to understand what they're looking at, what they're seeing, and what they can do, the questions they can ask. And I've had parents lash out like, oh, it's all on me. And it's kind of like, yeah, it is, because you need to ask the questions and you need to hold the institution accountable, because it is your kid.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we want the whole point of doing the martial arts is to keep your kids safe, and make sure they're not getting bullied, to help build confidence. And so, like, it's like you bring your kid to martial arts to protect them from monsters, but then like, oh, there's monsters in the school too there. So it can be kind of.
Yeah, that too is part of the training, is how you talk to your kids about protecting themselves, even from mommy or daddy. It's like, if mommy ever touches you in a way that you're uncomfortable, or daddy does. And even when the kids get older, the whole no means no thing. It's like, no. And it does have to be constantly reinforced and encouraged that no is a complete sentence, and it is a sovereign space. And no matter who it is, does not have permission to touch you without your permission. And if you're under a certain age, your permission doesn't count.
No, it's 100%.
So that's also another thing that has come up after trainings. I've had a number of women that didn't really understand until they went through the training that they could have wanted it from that favorite uncle or whatever, but that uncle was an adult, and they should have never ever crossed that line. And so to try to tell somebody that even if you jumped on their lap, it was not your fault. They're the adult, you were the child. Never, ever, 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 ever.
Kim, so say there is a case of abuse. What happens next, as far as like, do they fill a police report? Do they let a coach know, or like what happens after something like that occurs?
So let's just stick with the center, the martial arts center approach, and a child were to disclose to you, maybe from your training, remember, deep breath. Can you tell me more? You don't ever want to ask yes or no questions. You can't promise them that you won't tell anybody, because you will be telling somebody. You just say, we're going to make sure everything is taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
But as the person who receives the information, if you got enough detail, you would call the police where the crime happened, and you would contact DFACS where the child lives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that sounds like a lot. Like, how am I going to know that? You really don't have to know that, but school systems definitely know that. Even here's where it gets kind of tricky. Like, a school system might have a protocol, so the teacher's supposed to tell their supervisor or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of places do not want this to be known, but that doesn't matter. As an adult, as a trusted adult, you don't owe any system protocol. You can pick up the phone and call the police and say, this is what I've learned. You can pick up the phone and call DFACS and say, this is what I've learned. The tricky bit for parents, especially dads, is they don't want to call anybody except run over to the house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It never turns out well. Family denies it. Family packs up and moves. It's always a police matter. And the police can figure out the DFACS stuff. But it is a crime.
Mm-hmm.
It is a crime. It is a crime. And then knowing about that crime, we have a responsibility to report it. Anybody has a responsibility to report it. And I believe teachers here in Georgia, I think they might have less than 48 hours to report it. And if they don't, they're liable, they're in trouble.
Something that happens a lot, and that I've seen in just in my community again, is that people, say it's a lady, she comes out and says, she's been abused. A lot of it seems that other people will come to the aid of the abuser a lot of the times, maybe because he's a world champion, or he's really good, or something. I just, do you understand, like, what's the psychology behind that, where people, does that go back to grooming a little bit, to where
possibly, yes, especially if, like you said, they're a world champion, and they're such a great guy, and how would they get so far if they were so evil? And
mm-hmm.
Evil's real. Evil is very real. People do not want to talk about it. People do not want to believe it. I mean, it's horrific. If you really stop to think about what a adult is doing to a child, that's
Mm-hmm.
inconceivable. It's horrible. What I've also found, and this is totally anecdotal, I've never read anything about it, but in the stories that have come to me after a training, I've had a sister say, I remember my mom wasn't sure about the camp counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And as it came out a couple of years, when my brother was a young adult, that he had been abused, and she was all upset because she thought she knew something and she didn't want, like, it's this mental stuff. And so people who give the most pushback about it probably somewhere suspected something and didn't do anything. Maybe they were abused, maybe they are an abuser, but it's just no, wouldn't happen. I would know. That's another one. People who have been abused say, I don't need the training because I'm a survivor and I would know what to look for. And it's almost like it's exactly why you do need the training, because you have probably thought you're doing everything right to pick the right people in your child's universe. But groomers are smart, and they know what they want and how to get it.
This is like, it's a deep topic. It's not like something a lot of people want to talk about. It's not fun. It's not like happy.
No.
But I'm so happy, or I'm so thankful for you for coming on here, Kim. Is there anything else that I forget? Did I forget something, Kim? Let me know.
um, it's, you didn't forget anything, and I'm really glad that the stuff still sticks with you. I have been training for a long time and I still learn stuff. So, the one and done of taking a training is like, it's just a beginning, because as more and more people do start talking about the different types of situations, and now we've got social media, and with this pandemic, we have, all these Zoom, and there's all these different ways for people to just reach their
Mm-hmm.
target. Um, we just can't ignore it. And I'm glad that site's up that you were talking about, where they were just posting these stories, and it's like, I don't know how you came across it, but people aren't going to go look. I wonder who's posting about this stuff, right? But somebody took the initiative, is gathering them so that maybe somebody will have a question and we'll come across it, or you can send it to them. And it's like, look, you're not alone. We're talking about the isolation, and the kids that are abused, they think they're alone. They're told they're alone, that it's, it's only me. But it's not. It happens. We even had to change the numbers. When I first started training, it was 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys would be abused by their 18th birthday. Now we say 1 in 10, and that's literally because of the image people have in their mind about abuse. That's categorized differently. People want to go directly to physical intercourse in some way, shape, or form. But abuse it can be showing pornographic material. It's making them watch a live event. It's abuse, but it's everywhere.
And technology is just only making that easier, I would assume.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the apps like TikTok and like Snapchat? Because those are those definitely skewed towards a younger generation, and like if you're a parent, like I don't even know how to use those apps, so like how are you going to keep up with your kid, and they're all, you don't know what they're doing,
This is so off topic.
It's
but
okay.
I'm just going to say that there was that, the Parlor. It was like
Parlor.
a social media platform, right? They took the entire thing down. They took it down. They know what goes on in these exchanges. They can totally take down that stuff. They can totally take down these peep show things that are on the internet. They can take it down. I know there's all these things they're saying they're putting in place, words and algorithms and stuff like that. They know where the money's going. They know how to shut it down. It is on parents to have the conversations go on and on and on. They're going to have to look at their kids' phones. They're going to have the passwords. The kids can throw a fit, but my roof, my rules kind of stuff.
Have you used that line,
has
Kim?
to be.
Have you used that line?
Of course, yes. I've used that line. Of course. But it's a lot of work, People are busy. I don't want to think, who wants to think that stuff like that's coming across their kid's phone? Who's got the time to go through, It's hard. It's really hard, which is why the communication, whether they're little ones or big ones, it just has to be constant. And, actually the one thing, not that you forgot, but I think that's very important. One of the gentlemen in the videos talks about, it was his babysitter, and when his parents asked him about it, it had already happened. And his mom was, like, oh, has this ever happened to you? Because, that would be bad. And, all of the stuff, bad, bad, bad. And what he was hearing was, oh gosh, she's so upset. It's already happened. I can't tell her now. And he didn't for a very long time. So those lines of communication, like they just have to always remain open and open-ended. And it's never, ever, ever, ever the child's fault. Never, ever. Whether your coach wants to date you or not, it's not your fault. It's the adult's fault.
All right, Kim, I think we did a good job on this one.
Well, thanks for asking and remembering. I hope I made sense.
No, you did great.
Like I said, this is a format I've never really done before, but there is a lot. I'll be happy to, send me your email. I mean, your address on email, and I'll get you a book.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
There is a number. I don't know who's going to hear it, but there is a helpline for any questions. Is 1-866-367-5444 for training, for supporting survivors, for suspicions. There's always people have suspicions. I don't really know if I should report somebody. What do I do? They can kind of talk with somebody about some of the things that they're seeing and whether it's reportable or not.
No, I appreciate it. I'll make sure to put some graphic or something so the number stands out.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Alex.
All right, Kim, I think that's good.